Hello, everybody, and welcome into the 45th edition of Texas Longhorns Live. We really appreciate you guys being here. Please hit that like button. Please subscribe. We are here every Monday at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. We really appreciate when you guys join us, so please hit that like button. Please subscribe. We also have different videos coming out each and every day, so join us along the way. It really helps out. The season is, it's fast approaching. Spring ball starts tomorrow, so crazy how fast the offseason does go, especially when your team's good. I remember when our team was bad and the offseason seemed to go a little bit slower, maybe because you're not as excited for the season to come around. So can't wait for the season to start. And let's talk about this upcoming team and the breakout players for each group. So let's talk about the offensive line first. I tasked Gerald with the responsibility of picking an offensive lineman that we think is going to break out. We each have a different player, and let's talk about that. So who is your breakout offensive lineman, Gerald?
We're just skipping quarterback altogether. We don't. No.
I think we know who's going to break out there.
Oh man! So I went with Brandon Baker along the offensive line. He seems to be slotting in to be the guy opposite Trevor Goosby. I think Trevor Goosby's probably slotting in at left tackle, meaning Brandon Baker slotting in at right. And honestly, I picked Brandon Baker because I was shocked that Trevor Goosby was the first guy off the bench. That's not a shot at Trevor Goosby. I just remember watching Brandon Baker's tape coming out of high school and was like, this guy is freaking good. Like, he's really, really ready. And so when Trevor Goosby was the first guy to come off the bench when Texas needed it back this last season, I was surprised. And it was a good surprise, right? Because if Trevor Goosby jumped Brandon Baker, who came on campus a pretty already down the line developmentally, that meant that Trevor Goosby was really stinking good. And turns out he was. And so I think fans this time next year are probably going to be talking about Brandon Baker as a guy who is going to be, or who was a key piece of the offensive line. He is a great, great athlete. He's got a great body. He's going to slot in, I think, really well at that tackle spot. He was a ready-made guy. He was one of those guys that if Texas had to play a young guy along the offensive line, he was one that I think they would have tapped pretty early just based on his intangibles and the things he can do physically. But ultimately, they didn't have to. Happy about that. And so again, the simple fact that Trevor Goosby jumped Brandon Baker in the depth chart and in the hierarchy tells me that Trevor Goosby is really good because Brandon Baker came on campus already pretty stinking good.
No, 100%. That's a really good point. I think if Trevor Goosby, had only played like a couple snaps and did well, we could probably put him in this category. But I think the expectations for him and how he played last year, I think they're pretty high. But I agree. Yeah. And I think it tells you, like I say about Steve Sarkisian, he always has like 2 to 3 guys every recruiting class that he really wants and really prioritizes. Well, that was Brandon Baker last year, and they got him in the boat. It was known that, hey, I'm going to go to the highest bidder. I prioritize NIL a lot. So guess what? Texas went after him very hard, got him in, and I think he's going to have a really good year. He's going to end up being the right tackle most likely. And I expect a lot from him. Do I think he's going to be, amazing Kelvin Banks right away? No, I don't expect that because like we've talked about, that's very rare for that to happen. Do I think he's going to be a good player? Yeah, I do. I think he's going to be an all-around solid offensive lineman right off the jump, and he's going to have a big test. He's going to play Ohio State week 1, and they're going to have a bunch of pass rushers like they always do, so we'll see how he does in that game. If he does really well in that game, honestly, that could be like the best defensive line he'll go against all year. So that would tell us a lot right away if he does spectacularly in that game.
Absolutely. I mean, Texas is not we're going to know what they are, especially along in the trenches really early along.
No, 100%. So my guy is Devon Campbell. And it's kind of a weird one because I don't think he's shown up to the ability that he can yet. And that's why I put him down here. Like, we look at that class. He was the number 1 guy in that class, not along the offensive line in that class, guys. We talk about a guy that I think according to 247, they let out a list earlier in the offseason of best guys at their position over the last decade. He was number 1. He was the number 1 offensive lineman ranked of the past decade up until this class. So I don't know where he's going to rank after this class, but overall, really high ability that he really hasn't played to. And you look at it, Kelvin Banks came in lower than him, off to the NFL, going to be a first-round pick. Cam Williams played 1 freaking year. He's going to be off to the NFL as a top 45 pick. So this is a guy that if he lived up to that ability would have been gone by now. He probably, in his world, plays 3 years, gets drafted as probably a second-round pick because you have to be like an insanely good guard to be a first-round pick, like Quentin Nelson good. Now, do I think he has that ability? Yes. Do I think it's unfair to expect that? Yes, I do. But I think it's fair to expect like a second round pick after 3 years, and he just hasn't lived up to that. If he would have come out, he would have been like a fourth or fifth round pick most likely, and that's why he came back. So I think there's that next step for him to take. He's been healthy when he's played. The injuries have not been an issue. It's just been the consistency, and we've seen that. Some games you're like, damn, this guy's really coming on. He's going to be a stud for us. And other games, you're like, what happened to him? We've seen him get pulled for Cole Hudson because he hasn't played that well. So to me, I think it's time for him to break out, and I think he's going to break out and be that guy that we expected when he came on campus.
Yeah, I think that's fair. He was a guy who had lofty expectations, and I think he also had the disadvantage of coming in with Kelvin Banks, who came in and was a stud from day one, right? And so you're looking at DJ Campbell, and like, why can't you be more like your brother over there, right? And so for a guy like him who came in and he was not just an elite guy, but he kind of manufactured a little bit of drama with his recruitment. He kind of signed, but kind of didn't sign and wanted to have his own signing day and all of that. And so when you come in with that level of fanfare, the expectation is going to be really, really high, and he just hasn't lived up to it. And I think part of it, and I've talked about this before, he was in a very run heavy high school system, not a ton of pass block reps as a high school player. And so he was behind the curve in a lot of ways as far as development goes. And Texas has a lot of complexity of what they do along the offensive line. And DJ Campbell's problem has never been run blocking, right? It's always been his eyes, his focus, his feet when he's pass blocking. He's readily looking for work, but not looking in the right places, or his body's not in the right place. He's not turning his body in the right way. He's not. So there has been a level of expectation that he hasn't lived up to. And it's fair, right? He was a top rated guy, getting probably a decent NIL package to come to Texas, as far as the Pancake Factory goes and all that. And so, his ability, there's a lot of high hopes for him, and he hasn't lived up to them. So I would love to see. I was a big DJ Campbell fan, so I really hope he gets to live up to that expectation, because if he does, Texas is going to have a pretty good season.
Yeah, 100%. It will help out the offensive line, because we need someone to step up and be that leader on the offensive line as well, because you don't have that. You had a bunch of guys there last year. You had Kelvin Banks. You had Jake Majors. You had Hayden Connor. Devon Campbell, it's up to you. You are like the eldest statesman in that locker room at that position. So to me, take your game to that next level, and then also take your leadership to another level as well. And I expect him to do that. I think he's a really talented player, just got to be a little bit more consistent.
Yeah, I'm with you there. I think he's got it in him. He's got it in him, but we need to see it.
100%. So next, we'll talk about our wide receiver breakout, and I'll start with this one. I'm kind of on the same page as the last guy. I think DeAndre Moore is ready for a breakout season. I honestly think we could have seen this last year from him, but he kind of dealt with, I believe, a foot injury last year that kind of sidelined him for a little bit, didn't allow him to get up to speed for some games during the season. But he had a solid season, but not a great season. 39 receptions, 456 yards, 7 touchdowns, 11.7 yards per catch. And I think my expectations are, when the guys came out last year, the A.D. Mitchells, the Xavier Worthies, the Jordan Whittingtons, they were all asked at the NFL Combine, who's next? Because that's a typical question they ask players at the Combine. And all of them said DeAndre Moore. They said that guy's going to be special. He's hard-nosed. He gets to campus on time. He's always the first one to practice. That's always been reported. Like, this guy is the first person to practice more times than not. And he did a good job blocking. He was a hard-nosed player, but there was that explosive element at times that I missed from him. I think he has the capability of getting that 70 to 80 reception mark of 900 yards. Touchdowns are actually fine with me. I'm fine with 7 touchdowns, but more catches, more reliability, I guess. And I think he has that capability, and I think you're going to see that this year. And someone has to step up. Like, we don't have that number one wide receiver like we've had at Texas in the Steve Sarkisian era. You saw that with Xavier Worthy. Then you saw that with A.D. Mitchell and Xavier Worthy. Then you saw that last year with Matthew Golden, where he did step up. Who's going to be that guy this year? I expect it to be DeAndre Moore.
Yeah, and that 23 class is turning out to be a weird one at wide receiver, right? You have whatever the heck happened with Jonte Cook. You've got Ryan Niblett, who's been playing everywhere but wide receiver at this point. So DeAndre Moore at this point is the top guy from that class, right? So he is He was an explosive athlete. He's a guy that was highly coveted by Texas. That was a big. This was the Arch Manning wide receiver group, right? Arch Manning had a big hand in getting this wide receiver group, and so I think DeAndre Moore has an opportunity to step up and to step into that role. Texas, there's a vacuum, right? There's a vacuum at the dude at wide receiver. So who is it going to be? And I think he's got an option and an opportunity to be that dude. I think my guy also has an opportunity there. So the easy answer, right, is Khalil Lockett or whoever. But I've got Jamie French, and one. I think he's number 2 this year, like his actual jersey number. Only ballers get single digits. That's all I'm saying, right? You don't let the new kids get single digits if they're not doing something. But ultimately, I really think Jamie French is just one of those guys who can kind of do a lot, right? He was a top camp guy. He won multiple awards, like for when he was at Nike camps or Under Armour camps or all that. Was always one of the top couple of guys at those camps. A big body, right? 6'1", 6'2", like 185. So he's got that size and frame, but he's also got some background as a track athlete. So that's the Steve Sarkisian like perfection, right? Somebody who's both big body, can high point a ball, and can move quite quickly. He's got an opportunity to come in again, make a name for himself. This wide receiver room is wide open, and I just like his game. I like his aggressiveness, and he's not one of those wide receivers that doesn't like to block. He enjoys blocking it. And, even Brennan Marion's gone, but Texas still prioritizes and gives playing time to guys who like to block at wide receiver because it opens up the run game. And so Jamie French is a guy who has and can block. And so I think he's a guy who can step in and be an elite receiver early and often for Texas.
No, I don't disagree. I think what I said when Texas was recruiting him, I don't think he's spectacular at anything, but he's good at everything. Like, there's nothing I see on his tape. I'm like, you know what? There's nothing. I'm like, man, he really needs to get better at route running. Man, he needs more breakaway speed. He's just good all around. It's kind of what I said about Matthew Golden last year. Like, he's a B+ wide receiver that is good at everything. There's nothing I look at and say, hey, this guy needs to get drastically better at this for him to see playing time. I agree. I think he can definitely get some playing time early. And again, it's not just because he's a good player, but because Texas is lacking there. We don't know. There's like 6 to 7 guys that we could say, hey, this guy could break out of this position because they need someone to step up. I'm very confident Ryan Wingo is going to be a good wide receiver for this Texas team next year. After that, I don't know. We'll have to see. I think DeAndre Moore, I'd put him in that category as well. But we'll have to see about that position. And it's an exciting position. I 100% agree with you about the blocking thing, because not just because for the run, Sark, we know, loves the screens. And if you're not willing to block, you're not going to get as much playing time. We saw that kind of with A.D. Mitchell. A.D. Mitchell stayed on the field because he was a insanely good wide receiver. Us Texas fans and even Sark had, some issues with, hey, he's not that good of a blocker. And honestly, he doesn't really try to be that good of a blocker. Isaiah Bond kind of suffered the same thing. There were some times this year where Isaiah Bond's like, yeah, I'm just not going to block today. And he actually got benched for it because guess what? He wasn't as good at receiving as A.D. Mitchell was either. So if you're not going to be able to block in the Sark system, you better be a Xavier Worthy, A.D. Mitchell level skill player. And I don't think Jamie French is that yet. And I don't know if he will be, but he is a damn good blocker. You were right about that.
Yeah, I mean, that's that. I love that you said it. He's not like the number one guy at anything. He's just good at everything. He's a jack of all trades. Jordan Whittington made a career out of that for Texas, right? There are a bunch of guys who are big names for Texas that were just that mold.
100%. And I mean, Jordan Whittington's probably going to be a starting wide receiver for the Rams next year. And he played really well last year for the Rams. And Sean McVay and Matthew Stafford all sang his praises. So if you just do your job well in a Steve Sarkisian system, you will get noticed, you will get drafted, you will get paid, and you also get paid while you're at Texas. So I completely agree with Jamie French. It's going to be very interesting because that wide receiver room is wide open. Now, again, guys, if you know anyone that would like to sponsor a Mark Rogers channel, whether that be this channel, the Michigan channel, the Iowa channel. I mean, there's so many channels to choose from, and the Win Agency has had a great relationship with the Michigan channel. They love the work they do with them, and they've continued to sponsor them. I think we're talking about 6 or 7 months now they've been on there, and they're actually running a March Madness special on there on the Michigan channel where the winner can win $1,000. So they obviously love working with the voice of college football. So to get your business, product, service, or personal brand at the next level by partnering with the voice of college football, let's discuss how you can reach your target market. Check us out on experience on the screen, like I said, with the Win Agency. And then also we're here to deliver for you. Contact us at sponsorships@vocfb.com today. We really appreciate you guys doing that. And then also check out the new Instagram right there on the screen. Type in Voice of College Football on Instagram. I have the link right there in the comment section. Just click and go over subscribe. We really appreciate that. The content will keep churning out, especially as we get closer to the season. So we really appreciate that, guys. Also, last thing before we get to the next topic, check us out on your favorite audio platform. If you don't want to save your phone battery, because I know that's a big thing, or hey, summer's coming up, you're going on road trips, stuff like that, you can just listen to the Voice of College Football, Spotify, Amazon, Apple. Just type in the Voice of College Football. Find whatever you want. Texas, USC, Iowa, Michigan, Michigan State. It's all there, guys. We really appreciate you guys doing that. Now, let's talk about the next breakout position group, or breakout player from position group. And let's go defensive line. And I'll let you start out with this one, Gerald.
Yeah, I think I took the easy one, right? Justice Terry is the easy one on this one. I don't know what else to say, right? Justice Terry is a dude. There's no two ways around it. And much like the wide receiver room, Texas needs a dude at defensive tackle. There's a reason why they signed 1 million in the transfer portal. There's a reason why they went so hard after Justice Terry in this recruiting class, because he's a guy who can come in and make a difference day one. He's a guy who can play. He's a big body. He's a massive body. And I talk a lot about how like this system doesn't need massive playmakers at defensive tackle. It just needs massive bodies. He's both. He's a massive body and he can be a massive playmaker for Texas. So he's a guy who I think when we look at the lineage of defensive tackles from Texas, we go back to, Tavondre Sweat, we go back to Byron Murphy, we go back to, Vernon Broughton, Alfred Collins, we talk about Poona Ford, all those guys that like Texas is becoming like defensive tackle you in a lot of ways. And I think Justice Terry is just the next one of those guys that can come in and light things up for Texas at that D tackle position.
No, I agree. And again, it's just like the wide receivers where there's this vacuum left because of the guys you've lost. And like I said, I'm more concerned about this position this year than I was last year. Because again, you had Alfred Collins and Vernon Broughton. That you don't have anyone near that this year, like coming in. Like Travis Shaw, definitely high prospect coming out of high school, but he's not anyone that's really put up eye-popping numbers in college. Cole Brevard is more of a run stuffer more than anything. So we'll have to see what happens, but I completely agree. I think Justice Terry physically is ready to contribute right away. I don't know what level that's going to be, but like I said on our last video, I think going later into the season, like halfway through SEC play, I really think this guy's going to start making eye-popping plays. They're like, oh, that's why that guy was the third-ranked defensive lineman in the class. Like overall, that's what he was. So I completely agree. I think he's going to be a really good player for Texas this year, and especially moving forward. I think he's going to be like unstoppable in a couple years when he gets in the program, puts on a little bit more weight. Not that he even needs it, because he's already freakish. If you look up a picture of him right now, he's crazy to look at as like an 18-year-old kid. Yeah. So I agree. I think he's going to have a really big year for Texas this year and in upcoming years. My guy's Alex January, and I say that because in the spring last year, this guy was talked about. Like wherever you went, hey, this guy's eye-popping. He's only a 3-star coming out of Duncanville, but he's right up there with all these other defensive linemen of, wow, this guy can really play. We saw that in the spring. We heard about in the spring. And then he really didn't play that much during the season. But then guess what? Because of transfers and injuries and stuff like that, we see him get thrown into Ohio State. I remember watching the Ohio State game and 97's out there. I'm like, wow, he's playing in this game. He's getting a lot of minutes. I mean, he was getting a lot of snaps in the Ohio State game. And you didn't notice a drop-off of when he was in there. You never said, man, 97's getting his butt kicked. You actually saw him in a couple plays of making good football plays and being right where he needed to be and pushing the pocket a little bit. So I think his issue, honestly, was more weight. He came in kind of light, 6'5". I think he was like 320. You ideally would like him to get up to about 340 with that size. So I think you're going to see that this year, and I think you're going to see a really, really good football player this year in Alex January.
Yeah, and Alex January is I always talk about the guys that the stars don't tell the story. Go look at the offer sheet for Alex January, right? It was Alabama, it was LSU, it was Georgia, it was Michigan, all of those places that know how to grab those guys and grab guys and really develop defensive linemen. They all wanted it, right? So there's a reason why all those programs wanted Alex January. And I think it's turned out to be because he's got a high ceiling, right? And he's a guy who I think came in and like that 325 was deceptive. I think he hasn't really put on weight. He's just kind of shifted that weight to be, kind of a soft high school body to more of a firm college body. 6'5", 325, nothing to slouch at. He's Texas legacy too. So he's one of those guys I love when you have a guy whose dad or parent played at the University of Texas, because we've got plenty of elite female athletes at Texas as well, right? So when they have a parent that played at Texas, they also are good culture kids. They're also good, like, locker room players. They're guys who come in and understand what it means to have that Longhorn on the side of your head or across your chest, right? And so he's got that mix of elite attributes, big, long body, big frame, and he's got the right culture. He's got the right mindset. And I think he's a guy in a defensive tackle group that really needs some guys and some answers. He can come in and make a name for himself and really put a stranglehold on that spot.
No, 100%. I think it tells you a lot to when they needed someone to play. That's who they went to. So I think it's going to be very interesting to see how he develops in the spring and the fall, and then how he plays in the Ohio State game, because he's going to get a lot of run. Like, he's going to be in that 4 to 5 rotation of guys right away that are getting a lot of playing time. And I think he's going to be ready for it. It's usually when you start hearing about guys really early, their freshman year in the spring, those guys tend to be pretty good football players going down the road. That doesn't by accident, especially under Steve Sarkisian. Like, the guys that get pumped up that I've heard about, they really don't turn out to be, man, that guy was a bust as a football player. That really hasn't happened yet. So when that happens, they'll start to get worried. But I think he's going to be a really good football player for Texas.
I'm with you. I think he's going to be great.
Next, we'll go to breakout linebacker. So I'll let you kick this one off.
Yeah, again, I think I took the easy answer on this one. Bo Barnes, Elijah Barnes. I've been effusive with my praise for Bo Barnes on this channel multiple times, and I'll just do it again. He's a guy who I think if Anthony Hill didn't exist at Texas, I still wouldn't be super concerned about the linebacker position, because I think he's a guy that can come in and play from day one. He's a big, explosive athlete. He's a guy who likes contact. He's violent. I don't think he is as polished in the pass game as he needs to be to play every down, to be an every down player. But then again, Anthony Hill got picked on a bit in the pass game as well this last year. So I think Bo Barnes is going to be more of a situational guy, much like we saw, honestly, with Anthony Hill his freshman year, where it's like, hey, go and run stuff. Hey, go and create some havoc on the edge. He's a guy who can do some of that. Again, I keep mentioning Anthony Hill. He's not like the high level, like, could walk onto an NFL team today athlete that Anthony Hill is. But I think if Anthony Hill is like in the 90s, he's probably in the 80s, right? For Bo Barnes, he's violent, he's explosive, he comes downhill, he blows plays up, not afraid of contact, likes to initiate contact. It's just all of the things you want to say about a linebacker, you could say about Bo Barnes.
No, 100%. I think it's really, really important. I like senior risers, and this is a guy that was like a mid 4-star recruit. Then at the end of the cycle, I believe, ended up 5-star recruit. So this is a guy that played really, really well his senior season. And I think it was like a crazy stat. I didn't completely look at it like I should have on Twitter. When I saw it, it was like 20 tackles in a game or something crazy like that during his senior year, during one game, and like multiple sacks. Like, this guy was just creating all sorts of havoc on the football field his senior season. And I completely agree. I think he's ready to play right away. I don't think he's going to play a lot, because you got LaFau, and then you also have Anthony Hill. And then the guy I'm going to talk about is Anthony Smith. This is another guy, just like Alex January. All you heard about this guy, and I didn't think you'd hear anything, because he came in very undersized. Like, we're talking very skinny frame. He kind of looks like a cornerback more than a linebacker when he was playing last year. But a guy in spring ball that the coaches and every reporter was raving about, hey, they love this guy. This guy's a really good playmaker on the football field when he gets his opportunity. And you saw that. He made plays when he came on the football field. He was a pretty good special teams player. He also played a lot more at linebacker than I thought. He played 8 games, and I think 5 or 6 of those were at linebacker specifically. And he produced. I mean, 16 tackles in 8 games and very little playing time is pretty damn good. His issue, again, is weight. Can he put on 15, 20 pounds and get up to where he needs to be? But I think he also fills that void, honestly, if he stayed at that weight of, hey, this guy can kind of cover out of the backfield, can cover the tight end, can cover the running back out of the backfield, whereas Anthony Hill did struggle with that. Leon Fowl wasn't great at it. He was probably the best out of the guys last year, maybe, or other than David Benda. David Benda was really good, but guys remaining on the team. So maybe he fills that void this year if he doesn't put on the proper weight, but I think he's going to play a lot this year for Texas.
Yeah, and I think the other, like, not knock, but I think the other thing that led to Anthony Smith's longer, or at least expectation for a longer development curve, is like, he at Jasper was the everything guy, right? He didn't have an opportunity to develop as a linebacker in high school, because he played some quarterback, and he played some running back, and he played some defensive back. And so those guys they have a longer development curve, but ultimately I love those kind of guys because they can see the whole field. They know everybody's assignment. They're very smart football players. When they've had to play multiple spots like that, Ty Anthony Smith is that dude. And I think he's put on like 20 or 30 pounds since he's come to campus, which is good weight for a linebacker. He was undersized. I think he came in at like 180, and I think he's up to like 210 or 215 now, which again is playing much, much better. And he was a multi-sport athlete, so he's a well-rounded athlete. He's got the ability to do a lot of things. I think he ran track and played basketball. So he's got an opportunity. Like, he is one of those guys that when you think of the do everything players that turn out to be really, really good athletes, that's a Ty Anthony Smith. He's an all-around athlete who happens to just be 6'1" and 215 pounds. So he's going to play linebacker at Texas. And again, he's explosive off the edge. I think he had like 20 or 25 sacks as a senior coming out of high school and like 4A, I think 4 or 5A high school. I don't remember what Jasper is. But he's got a multiple skill set that Texas can deploy. So I think he's a guy who I'm excited to see flourish into this next year.
No, and that's another thing too. Like we talk about, Sark loves versatility on both sides of football. This is a guy that can play that role. Like, honestly, if he doesn't gain weight, you could slide him in certain packages, probably to the nickelback, and get away with it because he's a really, really good athlete. If he gains a little bit of weight, you could slide him to the edge and let him rush the passer a little bit, and then also play middle linebacker when his time comes. So I'm really excited to see what happens with him. This is another guy we saw from Texas A&M late in the cycle, guy that never visited Texas when we got him. So really exciting to see what he does this year. I think he's going to break out. I think he's going to play a decent amount of football. And then, like you said, going forward, I think he's going to play a lot of football as well.
I love it. I'm a big fan.
Next up, we'll talk about the cornerbacks. Who is your cornerback, Gerald?
Man, Santana Wilson is a guy who I think is got an opportunity for Texas to be like that. He can play either boundary or field corner, right? He's a big guy, 6 foot, almost, I think 190, 195 he's playing at last year. He's another one of those 3-star guys who came in and you started to hear a little bit about him. Not like a ton of buzz, but he's fast. He was a track guy in high school. I think he ran a sub 11 in high school as a junior. So he's a guy who I think has an opportunity to play into something at Texas. Big body, long arms. Again, he can play on either side. He's obviously going to play opposite of Manny Muhammad, I think, probably when he steps in there. He didn't have a lot of expectations coming into this class, right? He was one of those late additions, kind of one of those you sign as a developmental guy. And I think he's got an opportunity to really step into it. He plays really fluidly, good hips. Like, I love watching his tape just because he looks like he's a natural athlete. And so I'm really excited to see if he can step into that role. This is probably my longest shot of my group.
No, that's fair. I think the cornerback room is kind of stacked, honestly. You got Cade Phillips coming in this class, Caleb Chester as well, who I'm a big fan of. I think he's very underrated. And then you also have, like you said, Santana Wilson, Wardell Mack, Kobe Black. And I love the bloodline. Like, Adrian Wilson was a really, really freaking good football player. Yep. Physical, smart. I mean, listen, guys, he almost played till he's basically 40 years old as a safety. If you're playing that long as a safety, you got to be pretty smart because, let's be honest here, your athleticism not the same when you're getting in the late 30s. Yeah. So I'm a big fan. I agree. I think if he can be 60% of what his dad is, we're getting a very, very good football player. And I do think he'll get some playing time. I think, honestly, you're going to see a lot of rotation at the cornerback position unless someone just absolutely kills it during spring and fall football, which I don't know is going to happen. We'll have to see about that. But I do have a guy here that I'm hoping it does, and I think will break out, and that's Kobe Black. Mm-hmm. And I'm a big measurables guys when it comes to the cornerback, especially because, listen, you're going to be out there on an island a lot of the times, especially in a PK system. He does like to play man a decent amount. And 6'2", 204 pounds. And I believe his brother actually just ran like an absurd 40 time at his pro day, like a 4.3 something. So if he can take that speed with what he has, like lengthwise, we're talking about a really, really good football player. And there's still a chance for him to grow. Like, he could grow to be 6'3", maybe even 6'4". So I was really impressed in certain games with him. I actually said at his best last year, I thought he was just as good, if not better, than Manny Muhammad. The problem was consistency. And we saw that there were certain games where, like, man, that's really good, or certain plays. And the other plays, man, he got beat pretty bad. The Vanderbilt game comes to mind to me. Certain plays in that game, he made a lot of good plays. And then there's some plays he just got flat out beat. That's to be expected as a freshman cornerback. I think you're going to see him have a really big year for Texas. It's also concerning a little bit. I talked about this, about a month and a half ago. Maybe Jalen Gilbo slides outside, someone else slides in a nickel. Jalen Gilbo is sliding outside, so maybe they don't feel the same way we do about this cornerback room, and they slid out Jalen Gilbo for a reason. But to me, I think Kobe Black has a really good opportunity to play really good football at the cornerback position for Texas.
Yeah, I think Kobe Black is, again, one of those guys who played both ways in high school. And so that development has been a little bit slower and not slower, but he's had a little bit of a longer path to get there. But ultimately, there's a reason why he was a top 100. I think he was probably, 60 or 70, if memory serves, recruit coming out of high school. He's like that physical prototype. Like if you built a body type in a lab for what you want for a cornerback, like you mentioned, he's that dude, right? He is that kind of guy. Big body, wide frame, long arms, can really work fluidly, athletically, isn't afraid of contact. Again, I talk about this a lot when I talk about defenders. I love a guy who doesn't shy away from contact. He's a guy who doesn't mind coming downhill and playing a little bit of run support. I mean, again, he's got, he's got a body and a play style that I think fits what Pete Kwiatkowski wants to do defensively. He can play man, he can play physical, he can play the bump and run, and that's what we're going to have to see in this defense. That's what Pete Kwiatkowski runs, and so I think he has played, at least in high school, at high school level consistency, right? Played kind of above what I think people expected to him, and I think he's going to do that once again this year. I think you're probably spot on.
No, and I think it's what you said, the frame. Like, it's a Ryan Watts frame with the Jahdae Barron more athleticism, because I'm going to be honest, Ryan Watts is not super athletic. That's why he's a safety at the NFL. But frame-wise, that's exactly what PK wants. He wants like 6'1", 6'2" cornerback that can play press coverage, get physical at the line of scrimmage, come downhill, make plays on the football, and then also make plays in the run game. So he fits that to a T. Just about learning like you said, played both ways, so got to learn the cornerback position a little bit more. But he is my breakout cornerback. Let's talk about sponsoring the voice of college football once again. Again, guys, you can do that right there. That is, you win agency with some words about the TJ and John on the Michigan side of it. Again, you don't have to sponsor us. You don't have to sponsor the Michigan channel. You can sponsor anyone at the voice of college football. Get your business, product, service, or personal brand to the next level. Let's discuss how you can also reach your target market. Check out the experience of one of our current partners posted on the screen. Email us at sponsorships@vocfb.com today. We really appreciate you guys doing that. Also, check out the Instagram. I dropped the link in the comment section right there, so please check it out. Get on the ground floor of that thing. Help us grow. We really appreciate you guys doing that. And then also, check us out on your favorite audio platform, whether that be Spotify, Apple, Amazon, wherever it may be. You can check us out there. Voice of College Football. Again, Iowa, Ohio State, Michigan, we're all there. Please check us out. We really appreciate you guys doing that. And last but not least, let's talk about the safeties. Breakout safety. And this one, I have this guy down here. He is going to switch to nickel, but I have to put him out here because I think he's going to be a very, very good football player for Texas this year. And I think it's going to be a name that breaks out in most of college football. No, and I think it's Jelani McDonald. I think Jelani McDonald is just a special football player. He's got special instincts. He's got special athleticism. And I've been very impressed ever since he started playing. This is a guy that came in as an athlete. We didn't really know where we were going to use him. And when he got on the field, he just started making plays on the defensive side of the ball. So I have high expectations for him. 6'2", 205 pounds, played in 14 games last year, 33 tackles, 1 interception, 1 tackle for loss. And this is a guy that got on the field as a safety, guys, when you have Andrew Makuba, when you have Michael Tapp, when you have Derek Williams. Even when Derek Williams was healthy, this guy was getting run at the safety position. And I think it's a brilliant move to slide him into nickel. If you need him, you can also push him back out to safety. I think he's kind of, the Jahdae Barron of this Texas team. You can use him a little bit of everywhere this year. And I think he's going to be a really good football player for Texas.
Yeah, and he's like you talked about it already. Like, he is one of those guys that Steve Sarkisian and Pete Kwiatkowski that has a multiple skill set, right? When he came out of high school, the reason why he was an athlete was because we didn't know if he was going to grow into a linebacker, a wide receiver, or a defensive back, right? And he's kind of not vacillated or kind of stayed between in that tweener linebacker defensive back spot, which is perfect for what Texas has and wants at that nickelback position. So I think there's an opportunity there. Going to be big in run support. Again, I keep hitting on this point. He's a thumper. I love a thumper at a defensive back. I absolutely love a guy. I mean, we saw Andrew Makuba made a name for himself by being a thumper at that safety position. He's part of the reason why Georgia has quarterback woes, right? Because Andrew Makuba came in and thumped a couple of folks. And that's what Jelani McDonald, I think one of the things that folks, when you talk about breakout players, it's generally players that like fans really get excited about. And at a defensive back position, nothing gets a fan more excited than a guy who comes in and just mops up somebody. And I think that's going to be what fans get most excited about for Jelani McDonald. He's just going to be a destroyer at that nickel spot, and it's going to be fun to watch.
No, 100%. Who is your guy for the safety position?
This one was weird because he was a starter and then he got injured. But I think Derek Williams is a guy who I think fans forget about pretty quickly just because of what Texas had this year at safety. They had Andrew Makuba, they had Michael Taft, and Derek Williams got hurt, I think 5 or 6 games into the season. And so he hasn't really been that guy. And he was a guy who, honestly, when he came to campus, I thought he was a 3 and done for Texas. And I think he's probably not going to be that. Obviously, if he has a year where he's the best safety in the country, then he maybe comes out this year. But he came in as a freshman, played really well, got in a rotation. That was a heavy rotational room, was slated to be a heavy rotation guy this year and then got hurt. And he's a guy who I think he's going to be competing for the comeback player of the year, right? He has got a hunger, he's got a fire, and he's just a really good football player, right? He's a very gifted athlete. Can he trust the lower body is the question for a guy coming back from that kind of injury. Can he trust it? Can he pivot? Can he put the level of impact that he needs to on his lower body to make the plays? But if he is what he was before he got injured, Texas fans are going to fall in love with this kid all over again.
No, 100%. I'm a big fan. I think he's been the best or most well-rounded safety since he stepped foot on campus for Texas. Like, again, kind of like Jamie French. There's nothing I look at Derek Williams and I'm like, needs to improve. He's good in pass coverage. He's good in run support. Super physical at both. I really like Derek Williams. I'm hoping the ACL is okay, and I think it is. Like, I think that tells you a lot of, hey, Jelani, you're going to slide in down to nickelback because – if they really needed someone back there at safety, they didn't believe he was going to be healthy, they would have kept him back there at safety for the spring and fall camp. They obviously either believe in Xavier Filsaime, Derek Williams, or both, a combination of both. So I think both those guys you're going to see play a lot and play well. Obviously, we know we got Michael Taft back there. He'll be fine. And it's crazy to me how we've gone from, hey, you have Jelani McDonald. Hey, you have Xavier Filsaime. Hey, you have Derek Williams. Hey, you have Michael Taft. Couple years ago, guys, remember, we were running Keaton Crawford back there, and we were super, super unathletic, and that led to Michael Penix having one of the best college football games I've ever seen because guess what? We had no athletes in the secondary. That is not the case anymore. We have athletes galore back there in the secondary. That includes Derek Williams. I'm really excited to see if he gets back from injury okay, and hopefully he does. I think he's going to be a really special player, and like you said, if he has a really good year, he'll be off to the NFL. I do expect, though, it probably takes some time, and we'll have him probably for another 2 years on the 40 acres.
Yeah, and again, coming back from a knee injury, I was telling my friend, like, if you an ACL injury was effectively a career ender when I was in high school, and now a guy can come back in 6-8 months, which is wild to me. Just says how old I am. But yeah, he's a guy who, again, if he can come back and he can trust the knee and he can play as explosively and as aggressively as he did before, he's going to be a dude for Texas in a room where I think Texas already has a bunch of dudes.
No, 100%. I think the secondary room is pretty stacked. You could argue it's probably one of the 3 most stacked on the roster. I think, honestly, if we're looking at it, it's probably offensive line, secondary, and then and then the edge room. Like, if you just want to break that off separately from the interior, the edge room is stacked. But those are breakout players for each position group, other than quarterback, because guess what? We have Arch Manning. That's just going to break out. We don't need to make a video. I mean, we could make a video, but we're not going to do that yet. We'll make another video about him some other time. I feel like he gets talked about a little bit too much, but
Fair.
It is what it is. We really appreciate you guys being here. This has been the 45th edition of Texas Longhorns Live. Please hit that like button. Please subscribe below. Also, join us every Monday at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, in season, out of season, doesn't matter. We are here. We really appreciate you guys being here. And then check out our Twitters right there. That is mine. You can find me right there on X, Twitter, whatever you want to call it. And then here's Gerald's right there, X, Twitter, Blue Sky as well. Check it out, along with his podcast. So please check that out as well. Spotify, Amazon, Apple, doesn't matter. You can find it right there. We really appreciate you guys being here. This has been the 45th edition. And as always, guys, hook 'em.
Hook 'em. Watch women's basketball.
Yes. Watch the team that's actually good at basketball.